The VP stood in the doorway of my office, arms crossed, watching me pack my desk with a smile that made my stomach turn. "I'm sure you'll land somewhere that appreciates your cautious approach, Jessica." She emphasized the word cautious like it was an insult. What Lauren Hastings didn't know, as she stood there savoring her victory over the compliance director who'd been a thorn in her side for months, was that in approximately 6 hours, a $920 million pharmaceutical acquisition would hit a regulatory wall that only I could help them climb. And by then, I'd be long gone, and that smirk would be replaced by something much less pleasant. My name is Jessica Reeves, and I spent 7 years as Director of Regulatory Compliance at Biotech Ventures, navigating the impossible maze of FDA regulations, international standards, and corporate ambition. That Friday afternoon, I walked out after refusing to sign off on falsified compliance documents. Hours later, when the deal started unraveling, they finally understood what they'd lost. But by then, I wasn't answering their calls. Before I show you how one person's arrogance can torpedo a billion-dollar deal in less than a day, I need to be real with you for a second. If you've ever been pushed out for refusing to compromise your principles, if you've ever watched someone celebrate getting rid of you only to realize too late what you actually did, this story is going to resonate deeply. What happens next moves fast, it's intense, and it's incredibly satisfying. Hit that subscribe button right now, because you're about to see what happens when someone mistakes thoroughness for obstruction, when they confuse protecting the company with slowing it down. Now let's go back to that Friday, to the moment when Lauren Hastings made the most expensive mistake of her career. The confrontation that ended my employment at Biotech Ventures started on a Thursday afternoon in early November. I was in my office in our Boston headquarters, reviewing final compliance documentation for the acquisition of Novamed Pharmaceuticals, a mid-sized drug manufacturer based in New Jersey. Biotech Ventures was a pharmaceutical development company specializing in bringing experimental therapies through clinical trials and FDA approval. We had a market cap of about $4, $2 billion, and a reputation for aggressive growth through strategic acquisitions. Novamed represented our biggest deal yet, $920 million for a company with 3 FDA-approved drugs and a pipeline of promising therapies. I was 38 years old, Director of Regulatory Compliance, and I'd spent the past decade building expertise in pharmaceutical regulations across multiple jurisdictions. My job was to ensure that every acquisition, every product launch, every clinical trial met the complex web of requirements that governed our industry. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was essential. One missed requirement, one falsified document, one shortcut could result in billions in fines, criminal charges, or complete shutdown by regulators. The Novamed acquisition had been in progress for 9 months, led by Lauren Hastings, VP of Corporate Development. Lauren was 42, Harvard MBA, 5 years at biotech, and absolutely convinced that regulations were obstacles to be managed rather than requirements to be met. We'd clashed repeatedly throughout the acquisition process. That Thursday, I was reviewing the final compliance certification package that would be submitted to the FDA and the European Medicines Agency as part of the acquisition approval process. These certifications were critical. They confirmed that Novamed's manufacturing facilities, quality control processes, and clinical data met all regulatory standards. Without these approvals, the acquisition couldn't close. I was on page 47 when I saw it. A manufacturing inspection report dated September 15th, supposedly from the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, certifying that Novamed's primary manufacturing facility in Edison, New Jersey, had passed inspection with no significant findings. I'd been coordinating with the FDA throughout this process. I'd never seen this report. I pulled up my records. The actual FDA inspection had taken place in August, and the official report, which I had in my files, listed 12 significant deficiencies requiring corrective action before approval. Someone had created a fake inspection report, and it was in the package being submitted to regulators. I called my senior compliance analyst, Nina Patel. "Nina, did you put the September 15th FDA inspection report in the Novamed package?" "What September report? The only FDA inspection was in August. There's a report dated September 15th in the final package. Did it come from Lauren's team?" "Let me check." I heard her typing. Yes, it came from Lauren's office with a note saying it was the updated version that superseded the August report. I felt my chest tighten. Nina, that report is fake. The FDA didn't issue an updated inspection. Someone created this to hide the deficiencies. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, Jessica, what do we do? I'm going to talk to Lauren. Don't submit anything until I clear it. I walked down the hall to Lauren's corner office, the fake report in my hand. Her door was open, and she was on a call, laughing about something. When she saw me in the doorway, she held up a finger. 1 minute. I waited. She finished her call, swiveled in her chair to face me. Jessica, what can I do for you? I closed her door and sat down without being invited. Lauren, we have a problem. I slid the fake inspection report across her desk. This document is fraudulent. The FDA never issued a September inspection report. Someone in your team created this to replace the actual August report that showed 12 deficiencies. She glanced at it, then back at me. Jessica, that's the corrected version. Novamed addressed the deficiencies, and the FDA issued an updated assessment. No, they didn't. I've been the primary contact with the FDA throughout this process. There is no updated report. This is fabricated. Her expression hardened. Are you calling me a liar? I'm saying someone on your team created a fake FDA document, and we cannot submit it to regulators. If we do and they discover it, we're looking at criminal fraud charges. Lauren stood up, walking to her window. Jessica, do you know how long I've been working on this deal? 9 months, 18-hour days, weekend negotiations. I've built relationships, made promises, structured terms. And now, 3 days before closing, you're telling me we can't proceed because of some paperwork issue? It's not a paperwork issue. It's document fraud. And it's not just this report. I pulled out my laptop, showing her the other discrepancies I'd found. There are 3 more fabricated certifications in this package. Quality control audits that never happened. Environmental compliance approvals from agencies that were never contacted. Someone is systematically creating fake documents to hide Novamed's compliance problems. Novamed is a good company with good products. The deficiencies are minor, technical. They're not minor. One of them involves inadequate sterility controls in their injectable drug manufacturing. That's the kind of deficiency that leads to contaminated products, patient deaths, and criminal liability. We cannot certify compliance when we know there are active, unresolved deficiencies. Lauren turned back to me, her voice cold. What I'm hearing is that you want to kill this deal. I want to do this deal correctly. We fix the deficiencies, get legitimate FDA approval, then close. It delays us by maybe 3 months. 3 months? Jessica, we have investor commitments based on a Q4 close. We have integration teams ready to deploy. We have public announcements scheduled for next week. I'm not delaying this acquisition because you're paranoid about technicalities. These aren't technicalities. They're federal regulations. She came back to her desk, leaning forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign off on that compliance package exactly as written. We're going to close this deal on Monday as planned, and afterwards, if there are any compliance issues, we'll address them during integration. No. Excuse me? I'm not signing off on fraudulent documents, and I'm not letting this company submit fake certifications to the FDA. It's illegal, it's unethical, and it will destroy us when it comes out. Lauren's face flushed red. You don't get to make that call. This is a strategic business decision above your pay grade. Compliance isn't above my pay grade. It's literally my job. And my job is to protect this company from exactly this kind of catastrophic mistake. She picked up her phone. We'll see what the CEO thinks about your refusal to support critical business objectives. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room with Lauren, our CEO Michael Chen, our General Counsel Peter Walters, and our CFO Sandra Liu. Lauren presented her version. I was being obstructionist, killing a strategic acquisition over minor paperwork concerns, not a team player. I presented mine. Someone had created multiple fake regulatory documents, and submitting them to federal agencies would constitute fraud. Michael looked at Peter. Legal perspective? Peter was quiet for a moment. If the documents are indeed fabricated and we knowingly submit them, that's a federal crime. Mail fraud, wire fraud, making false statements to government agencies. We'd be looking at criminal prosecution, not just fines. Lauren jumped in. They're not fabricated. They're updated versions. I can prove they're fabricated, I interrupted. I have the actual FDA correspondence. I have the inspection dates. I have the names and phone numbers of the FDA inspectors. We can call them right now and verify. Michael raised a hand. Let's not escalate this. Lauren, can we get legitimate updated certifications from the FDA in a reasonable time frame? If we ask for reinspection, it pushes us into Q1 at the earliest. We lose the deal. Then maybe we lose the deal, Peter said. Better than losing the company to criminal charges. Lauren slammed her hand on the table. This is exactly the problem. Jessica has been a roadblock on every aspect of this acquisition. Every requirement, every document, every timeline. She's not protecting the company. She's protecting her own authority. And frankly, I'm tired of it. Michael looked at me. Jessica, is there any way to certify compliance without these disputed documents? Not honestly, no. Novamed has real compliance deficiencies that need to be fixed before we can legitimately certify anything to regulators. Lauren stood up. Then I'm making a business decision. Michael, either Jessica signs off on this package by tomorrow morning, or we need a new director of regulatory compliance who understands how strategic acquisitions work. The room went quiet. Michael looked uncomfortable. Sandra looked shocked. Peter looked like he was calculating legal exposure. Michael spoke carefully. Jessica, I value your expertise, but I also need to consider the broader business context. Can you take tonight to reconsider? Maybe there's a middle ground? There's no middle ground between fraud and compliance, I said. I won't sign off on fake documents. If that costs me my job, so be it. Lauren smiled then, a cold, satisfied smile. Then I think we have our answer. Michael, I need authority to move forward with someone who can actually support our business objectives. Michael hesitated, then nodded. Peter, work with HR on the transition. Make it clean. I stood up. I'll make it easy. I resign. Effective immediately. You can handle your fake certifications however you want, but my name won't be on them. Lauren's smile widened. How professional of you. I walked out of that conference room at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. By 5:15, I was packing my desk while Lauren watched from my doorway, arms crossed, looking like someone who'd just won a game she'd been playing for months. I'm sure you'll land somewhere that appreciates your cautious approach, Jessica, she said, that smirk never leaving her face. I didn't respond. I just packed my things, turned in my badge to security, and walked out. What Lauren didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that I'd spent 7 years building personal relationships with regulators at the FDA, the EMA, and a dozen other agencies. I'd established myself as one of the few people in the industry who could navigate the complex approval processes for international pharmaceutical acquisitions. And Novamed's own regulatory team had specifically requested that I be the primary compliance contact for the final approval meetings. By Monday morning, Lauren was going to discover exactly how replaceable I wasn't. If you've ever been forced out for refusing to compromise your ethics, if you've ever walked away from something knowing it was about to fall apart without you, drop the word principles in the comments. Let me know you understand what that moment costs. And stay with me, because what happens Monday morning is going to be perfect. I spent the weekend in a strange state of calm. Not quite relieved, not quite worried. I'd done the right thing. The consequences weren't my problem anymore. Saturday, I went for a long run along the Charles River. Sunday, I had brunch with my sister and told her the whole story. So what happens now? She asked. They either fix the compliance issues properly or the deal falls apart. Either way, it's not my responsibility anymore. Do you think they'll fix it? I thought about Lauren's smirk, about Michael's hesitation, about the pressure they were under to close. No. I think they're going to try to push it through and hope nobody notices. And when someone does notice, then they'll wish they'd listened to me. Monday morning, I woke up at my usual time but had nowhere to go. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started updating my resume. At 9:47 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Jessica Reeves. Ms. Reeves, this is Dr. Patricia Holbrook from Novamed Pharmaceuticals. I'm our VP of Regulatory Affairs. We have a scheduled compliance review meeting at 2 p.m. today with the FDA, and we were expecting you to be there. My stomach dropped. Dr. Holbrook, I'm no longer with Biotech Ventures as of Friday. Silence. I'm sorry, what? I resigned on Friday. They'll need to send someone else to the review meeting. Ms. Reeves, you've been our primary compliance contact for this entire acquisition. You signed all our preliminary certifications. The FDA specifically requested your presence at this final review. We can't proceed without you. I understand, but that's no longer my responsibility. You'll need to coordinate with Biotech's current compliance team. Who is that? I honestly don't know. I left Friday afternoon. Another pause. Ms. Reeves, I need to be very direct. If you're not at this meeting, the FDA isn't going to approve the transfer of our drug manufacturing licenses. That means the acquisition can't close. Are you aware of that? I suspected as much. Then, I don't understand. Why did you leave 3 days before the most critical approval meeting? I chose my words carefully. Dr. Holbrook, I left because I was asked to certify compliance documentation that I believed to be inaccurate. I wasn't willing to do that. A long silence. What kind of inaccuracies? I think that's a conversation you should have with Biotech's current management. But if I were you, I'd review very carefully any FDA inspection reports dated after August, any quality control certifications from the past month, and any environmental compliance approvals that you don't personally remember completing. Oh my God! Her voice had changed completely. Ms. Reeves, I need to call you back. She hung up. I sat staring at my phone, feeling something between vindication and dread. At 11:15 a.m., my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. Lauren Hastings. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. I declined. She called a third time. I turned off my phone. At 1:30 p.m., there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. A young man in a suit, holding an envelope. I opened the door. Can I help you? Jessica Reeves? I'm from Biotech Ventures. I have a letter for you. He handed me the envelope and left quickly, like he'd been told not to engage. I opened it. A formal offer of contract employment. 5 days, 50,000, sole purpose of attending the FDA compliance review and supporting the acquisition approval process. I texted the number at the bottom of the letter. Not interested. The response came back immediately. Name your price. There is no price. I'm not certifying compliance for documents I know are false. Find someone else. There is no one else. You're the only person the FDA will accept. I didn't respond. I turned my phone off again. Tuesday morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I scrolled through them. Lauren, Michael, Peter from legal, Sandra from finance. Unknown numbers that were probably investors or board members, and 6 messages from Dr. Holbrook at Novamed. I called Dr. Holbrook back first. She answered immediately. Ms. Reeves, thank you for calling. We need to talk about the compliance review. Dr. Holbrook, I told you I can't help. I'm not calling to ask you to come back. I'm calling to tell you that yesterday's FDA meeting was postponed. When our team reviewed the compliance documentation more carefully after our conversation, we found exactly what you warned me about. Fabricated inspection reports, fake certifications, We've withdrawn our approval for the acquisition pending a complete compliance audit. I sat down slowly. You withdrew approval? We had to. If we'd proceeded and the FDA discovered those fake documents, both our companies would face criminal charges. Ms. Reeves, you saved us from a catastrophe. I wanted you to know that, and to thank you. What happens now? Now, NovaMed conducts a comprehensive review of our actual compliance status. If the deficiencies can be fixed within a reasonable time frame, maybe we revisit the acquisition in 6 months. If not, she trailed off. The deal is dead. After we hung up, I made coffee and opened my laptop to the financial news. The headline was already there. Biotech Ventures, 920 meters acquisition suspended over regulatory concerns. The article was brief but damaging. Sources close to the transaction indicate that significant compliance deficiencies were discovered during final regulatory review, forcing target company NovaMed Pharmaceuticals to withdraw approval. Biotech Ventures stock fell 28% in pre-market trading. My phone rang. Michael Chen, the CEO. I answered this time. Jessica. Michael. I assume you've heard. I have. He was quiet for a moment. We need to talk, in person. The board wants to meet with you today. For what purpose? To discuss how we move forward from here. Michael, I don't work for you anymore, remember? I resigned after being told to certify fraudulent documents. I know, and that was... I made a mistake. We made a mistake. The board understands that now. What about Lauren? Another pause. Lauren has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into the compliance documentation. The board wants to discuss your return as Senior Vice President of Global Regulatory Compliance, reporting directly to the board with authority over all compliance decisions. I leaned back in my chair. And if I say no? Then we try to salvage this situation without you. But Jessica, we both know how that ends. You built the relationships with the FDA, the EMA, with NovaMed's regulatory team. You're the only person who can potentially save this deal. The deal you wanted me to save with fake documents. I know, and I'm telling you, that was wrong. We're not asking you to certify anything false. We're asking you to help us do this right. Finally. Okay, we're at the turning point. Everything is about to shift, and you need to see how this ends. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now. The conclusion is going to show you exactly what happens when someone who was pushed out holds all the cards. Let's finish this. I met with the biotech board Wednesday afternoon at their downtown Boston offices. All 9 board members were present, including the chairman, Douglas Reed, who'd been on vacation during Friday's disaster. Douglas spoke first. Ms. Reeves, on behalf of this board, I want to apologize. We failed in our oversight. We failed to protect you when you were doing your job correctly. And we enabled a situation that nearly resulted in criminal fraud. That's on us. I nodded, but didn't speak. We've spent the past 2 days understanding what happened, he continued. The compliance documentation that Lauren Hastings' team prepared was falsified. Multiple documents. We've identified the individuals responsible, and they've been terminated. Lauren has been removed from the company entirely, effective immediately. What about the acquisition? I asked. Sandra Liu, the CFO, answered. NovaMed has agreed to keep negotiations open while we conduct a legitimate compliance review and remediation. But they're requiring several conditions. First, that you personally oversee the compliance process. Second, that we bring in independent auditors to verify everything. Third, that we accept financial penalties and revise terms to compensate for the delay and breach of trust. How bad are the revised terms? The purchase price remains at $920 million, but we have to accept additional contingencies, extended transition periods, and we're liable for $180 million in penalties if we fail to remediate the compliance issues within 6 months. Plus, we've lost our credibility with investors, regulators, and the market. Our stock is down 28% and may not recover even if we save the deal. Douglas leaned forward. Jessica, we want you back, not as director, as Senior Vice President of Global Regulatory Compliance. You'll report directly to this board. You'll have veto authority over any transaction that you believe doesn't meet compliance standards. No one, not the CEO, not any VP, can override your decisions. And we're prepared to offer you a compensation package that reflects the critical nature of your role. He slid a folder across the table. I opened it. The base salary was 3 times what I'd been making. Stock options, performance bonuses tied to successful compliance outcomes. There's one more thing, I said, closing the folder. I want it written into my contract that Lauren Hastings can never hold any leadership position at Biotech Ventures or any company we acquire. And I want written guarantees that any employee who reports compliance concerns will be protected from retaliation, with automatic board investigation if they're terminated within 12 months of reporting. Douglas nodded. Done. Anything else? Yes. I want a formal apology to my entire former team, and I want Nina Patel promoted to Director of Compliance with appropriate compensation. She stood with me when it mattered. Agreed. I looked around the table at 9 board members who finally understood what they'd almost lost. Then I'll come back, but I'm doing this my way. No shortcuts, no fake documents, no pressure to certify something that isn't true. If that means we lose deals, we lose deals. That's exactly what we need, Douglas said. Welcome back. Over the next 6 months, I personally oversaw the remediation of every compliance deficiency at Novamed. Real FDA inspections, legitimate certifications, proper documentation. It was slow, expensive, and thorough. The acquisition finally closed in May, 7 months late, at a cost $180 million higher than originally planned, but it was clean, legitimate, something we could all defend under oath if we had to. Lauren Hastings never worked in the pharmaceutical industry again. When companies called for references, they were told in very careful legal language that she was not eligible for rehire due to compliance violations. Her LinkedIn went silent. Her name disappeared from industry conferences. And I became exactly what they should have valued from the beginning, the person who protected them from their own worst instincts. 2 years later, I was invited to speak at a pharmaceutical compliance conference. During my presentation, I told the story of that Friday afternoon, the fake documents, the forced resignation, the deal that collapsed within hours. The lesson here isn't about regulations or paperwork, I told the audience. It's about understanding that compliance isn't an obstacle to business. It's the foundation that makes sustainable business possible. When Lauren Hastings stood in my doorway watching me pack, smirking because she thought she'd finally removed the person slowing her down, she didn't realize she'd just eliminated the only person who could have helped her succeed. I clicked to the next slide. 6 hours after I left, the deal started falling apart. Not because I sabotaged it, because it was built on lies, and lies eventually expose themselves. I didn't destroy that acquisition. They did. I just refused to be part of it. After the presentation, a young compliance officer approached me. Ms. Reeves, my VP is pressuring me to approve something I know isn't right. If I refuse, I'll probably lose my job. What should I do? I looked at her for a long moment. You already know what to do. The question is whether you're willing to pay the cost. But here's what I've learned. The cost of compromising is always higher than the cost of standing firm. It just takes longer to show up. She nodded slowly. What if they fire me? Then you'll be exactly where I was that Friday afternoon. Packing your desk, watching someone smirk, wondering if you made the right choice. And I can tell you from experience, you'll know you did. And eventually, so will they. That evening, I received an email from her. I refused to approve it. They weren't happy, but they backed down. Thank you for giving me the courage. I replied, You always had the courage. You just needed permission to use it. The VP smirked as I packed my desk on Friday, satisfied that she'd finally removed the obstruction to her ambitious acquisition. By Monday, the $920 million deal was in collapse, and by Wednesday, she was gone. I came back with triple the authority and watched from a position of unshakable power as the company learned the most expensive lesson of its existence. The people you dismiss as obstacles are often the only thing standing between you and disaster. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever been forced out for doing the right thing? Have you ever watched someone celebrate getting rid of you, only to realize too late what they'd lost? How did it end? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your story. And if this reminded you that principles aren't negotiable, that compliance isn't obstruction, and that sometimes the person they're trying to get rid of is the person they need most. Subscribe to this channel. We're telling stories about people who refused to bend when everyone wanted them to break. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, when someone smirks while you pack your desk, give it a few days. That smile never lasts. I'll see you in the next one.